What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Cocktails in the War Room. I am your host, Mistress Carrie. Welcome to the War Room, where we have met for 308 episodes, starting back on March 14th of 2020. So we just had our 5th anniversary last week, which is crazy. We did 80 nights in a row riding through COVID, and then we launched the Mistress Carrie podcast and decided to turn Cocktails in the War Room into a weekly show where we get together to talk about music and life. And normally the show starts right about 8:30. I do want to apologize for the show starting a little late. See that little puppy over there? Yeah. She decided to have an accident on the floor while I was setting up the lights in the war room. And I just happened to be barefoot and just happened to step in it. So we're having a day. And the two of them are absolute psychopaths right now. So for anybody that's new to the War Room, allow me to introduce you to my co-host, Friday and Wednesday. You can find them at Wednesday the Goth Pug on Instagram. So yes, there was a little bit of cleanup required and the sterilizing of the foot that needed to happen as well. So I apologize for my tardiness. What's up, Donna and Sherry, Joshua? Mr. Voorhees is here. Boston Biotics on Instagram. Let's go, he says. Christina and Brett. Sherry and Jessica. Why are you throwing all the toys on the floor? I put them up here so you guys had stuff to play with, and now you're tossing them all on the floor. Why do you do that? Jessica says, oh, that is not fun. So Friday had a landmine in the war room. No, not a landmine. It was a number 1, not a number 2. So it didn't smell and I didn't see it on the floor. And then I stepped in it and I walked across the hardwood floor. So yeah, we've joked all the time about the fact that I have 2 different size feet, right? Here's part of the problem. The little foot has nerve damage. And so I can't feel everything all the time. So when I walk in something that's wet necessarily, sometimes I don't know I walked in something wet and then I figure it out. Friday. Yeah, exactly. You know what you did. You know what you did. Say you're sorry to everybody for making the show late, for having an accident. She's got to go to the doctors this week to have her blood work because she's getting fixed next week. So I planned it on a few days where I knew that the studio wasn't going to be very busy, that I wasn't going to be doing a lot of extra crazy things. So that I remember when Wednesday got fixed, I was still driving to Boston every day to go into the studio. And I asked my boss, I was like, I need to bring her with me. There isn't anybody that can be with her. She just had surgery. She was like this little itty bitty fur ball. And I brought her, she was all high on drugs. And I brought her into the studio. She napped on my desk. And then I had her literally on the console in the old AAF studio. And she just slept. So I know that it's going to take a couple of days for Friday to kind of shake it off. So I planned the surgery for next week so that I had easy days so that I could just be with her. So Don says, good evening, Carrie and War Room family. Jonathan says, moist. Yeah, exactly. Christina says, welcome home, astronauts. They have been in space so long, they need to relearn how to walk. That is insane. They also say that you actually lose height. You know, the twin brothers that they did like experiments on them based on how much time they spent in space. And one of the twins is now like an inch shorter than the other one because of the amount of time that they spent in space, which is kind of insane. Sherry says, tonight I made homemade cinnamon donuts with cinnamon icing. That sounds delicious. Mr. Cole says, was she broken? Well, in a manner of speaking, yes. We got a little surprise on Valentine's Day. So yes, she's being fixed. A lot of people ask me why I don't like breed them myself. And it's not something I want to get involved with. I love the dogs. Oh yeah, look at her now. She's being all cute. I just want them to be here for me to love them. I don't look at them as a revenue stream. I don't look at them as, like a business opportunity. So that's why. Because everybody always asks me like, oh, you didn't get her fixed yet? Or you can have a litter of puppies first. You can make so much money. And Not interested in that at all. Friday is about to see and smell colors. Oh, she is going to for sure. Good evening, Rodney, chiming in on Facebook. Mr. Voorhees says, I thought you got taller in space because your spine expands. Yes, but then you come home and the force of gravity, because you're not used to it, shrinks you. It's really crazy the way that space affects your body, and based on how long you're in space, it deteriorates your muscles. That's why they have a treadmill up there, and they have to get you to do resistance training because you lose so much musculature, you know what I mean, because you're weightless and you're not picking things up. Like, you don't notice that just moving about your day, even if you're not at the gym and trying to exercise, you're using muscles doing everyday tasks because of gravity. And so when you're not in that environment, your muscles aren't being worked the same. So it's really, really interesting, all the medical tests that they do on these astronauts after they spend a lot of time in space. And this was not planned time in space. So it's not like they had extra training regimens in place or whatever. Mark Strait says your heart weakens too. Yeah, it really is insane. And then the opposite kind of happens. Have you seen those like free divers, the ones that dive like serious depths in the ocean without like scuba equipment, the ones that just hold their breath for like 6, 7, 8 minutes? They're going into pressure underwater. And so their muscles, their heart, their lungs work harder against the pressure of the water. And so you're almost getting the exact opposite happening. It's really fascinating. My sister is a biologist and she's way more nerdy about this stuff than I am, but it really is interesting. And so when these astronauts come home after being up there for 9 months with no gravity, can you imagine what that does to like your digestive tract and like your internal organs and just how they function? I can't imagine it. So being in space does bad things to your vision also, apparently. Yeah, exactly. Like, I would still want to go to space. Like, it's on like my end all be all bucket list. It's probably never going to happen because I don't have the money to do it, but I would love to go to space. However, I would not want to spend 9 months up there. And I sure as hell don't want to live on Mars. Can we find a place that's nice? Mars is like the Kalahari minus the cool animals. It's just orange and sandy, and there's just no, can we go someplace cool? Someplace that has like water and aliens and like stuff? I don't know. They better be submitting for overtime, says Donna. Hence why Navy SEALs are badasses, says Bish. Well, it's not just the Navy SEALs. It's the Delta operators. It's the PJs. It's the MARSOC Raiders. The amount of training they do in the water at depths with lifting things. I went and toured one of the water training facilities for special operators, like the big giant indoor pool, and just the insane stuff that they do underwater, like running with boulders on the bottom of the pool. And it's just unbelievable what your body is capable of doing if you're prepared and trained enough. How sick was Seven Dust on Instagram? I never thought I would ever see them play a venue that big. And even though it was only 6 songs, they killed it as they always do, says Dirts. Yeah, so I added a new t-shirt to my collection from the show on Friday night. I do have a bunch of pictures that I wanted to show you guys from the Disturbed 3 Days Grace and Seven Dust Sickness 25th anniversary tour at the Garden on Friday night, which was the actual 5th year anniversary of Cocktails in the War Room, which is why we didn't have an event, because I could not miss this show. So I do want to tell you guys that I kind of screwed up a little bit. So because I talked to LaJean Witherspoon from Seven Dust before the show, I set up interviews with 3 Days Grace and Disturbed at the show so that I could release them as bonus episodes of the podcast this week. So I wanted to show you some of the pictures. So the guys from Disturbed, they have 2 dressing rooms. John Moyer, the bass player, and David Draymond share a dressing room. And then Mikey Wengren and Dan Donegan share a dressing room. And so this was inside of Mike and Dan's dressing room, which this picture over here shows you a little bit better of like the setup, the giant wardrobe cases that they have with all of their stage clothes, the pieces of paper that are kind of hung up in there is like the day sheet, which tells them like where they are, what time they're going on, what time they need to be on the bus. They call it bus call at the end of the night, where they're going next. Just all of that kind of stuff, the Wi-Fi passwords for the venues. And then the other one is the set list, which obviously for the first set of the show is the same every night because they're playing the debut album in order in its entirety. But the second set, I think they have the ability to like move it around a little bit. So I went into Mike and Dan's dressing room. We sat down and did an interview, which is now up as a bonus episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast. So this was the picture that we took after the interview. This is inside the dressing room, just kind of like hanging out on the couch with the little recorder, just talking or whatever. I also went to the meet and greet with the whole band so that I could say hi to everybody. David Draymond obviously is being super proactive with protecting his voice. He goes to the meet and greets, obviously. He sees people, he talks to people, but he really does try to protect his voice pre-show the best he can. And I think he's letting Mike and Dan do a lot of the interviews to protect his voice as well, something you guys have heard me talk about with artists on the podcast all the time, that the worst thing that a singer can do, especially on a show day, is a lot of interviews. And because Disturbed is doing 2 sets, David's doing a lot of singing, and not just like screaming singing, but obviously with slower ballads, he's doing a lot more upper register singing as well. So that's why he's not doing a lot of interviews. So these guys, it was great to see these guys. We talked a little bit about the burning banners in Chicago in the arena from their hometown show the week before, which they told me there's not really fire damage because all those banners are fire retardant to be in those arenas anyway. But if you didn't hear, it's a big story that the Bulls 6 championship banners, the Michael Jordan championships, they say that the banners were damaged because of the Disturbed show. So they didn't get burned. What happened was the heat from the fire was making the banners dance in the rafters. The same thing happened to the Bruins banners because they were above the stage in Boston. Those banners have pipes at the bottom that keep the banners hanging straight. Otherwise, they would flutter with any little air conditioning breeze. And it was so hot that the banners were twisting and bumping into each other because of those pipes. And so it's not fire damage to the banners, but the guys were telling me when the microphones were off, like they're saying that the fire damaged the banners, but it didn't. It's just that the banners were swinging around and bumping into each other. So the Bulls banners have been pulled down from the arena for the rest of the basketball season while they figure out what they're going to do. But they did not burn the Bulls banners. They didn't burn the Bruins banners either. Although there were a lot of Boston firefighters there that were on the detail, and I took pictures with some of them, and they were watching everything because there is a lot of fire when it comes to a Disturbed show. Was supposed to go, but my sister-in-law was rushed to the ER, says Bish. Bad dehydration, she says. What's up, Kevin? Joining us on Facebook. Let's see. Slower ballads actually puts more strain on the voice. Exactly. That's why he has to be careful about all of the extra talking so that he can make sure, because those slower ballads come on the second set of like the greatest hit set. There's no ballads on the debut album from Disturbed. So he's got to make sure that not only his voice has stamina, but also range. And they're doing 2 sets every night. So David Draymond's really, really, really protecting his voice. He did not hang out after the show. There was a big post-show party, which I will tell you about in a minute, but David Draymond doesn't go to those. He's not drinking after the shows. He's just resting his voice and chilling out. So, Rachel says, I heard about Chicago's banners, and my first thought was somebody better check on the banners at the Garden. They're fine. They are absolutely fine. Sounds like they just want to replace the banners and just blamed them. Look, I don't know what's going on All I know is there was no fire anywhere near those banners. There's footage in Chicago of the banners kind of fluttering around because of the heat, which the exact same thing happened in Boston. What is funny is that at certain points of the night, the fire was so hot that the heat was rising up into the rafters, which was unsettling like giant clumps of dust that are on all of the I-beams and the rafters of the arena. And so during the show, it looked like someone was shaking out like a dryer vent out of the rafters of the Garden, because these chunks of like gray dust, because it was so hot up there and the air was moving around because of all of the fire, that all of a sudden these chunks of like gray lint were just like falling out of the sky. It looked like it was in a special effect, but it's just dirty Garden. Brendan says, I owe a lot to AAF for introducing me to Disturbed. We talked a lot about that, not only during this interview, but also just afterwards. You know, the guys talked about, like, I think the first time Disturbed played in Boston, they played at the Middle East in 2000, right when the record was coming out. Then I think they came back and played Local Bazooka. And then obviously we all know what happened after that. I think The Sickness sold like 7 million copies, which for a band's debut album is kind of insane. Bish says if the banners did burn, Bruins fans would just blame Sweeney. Yeah, trust me, these guys, being from Chicago, are big hockey aficionados, and Mike Wengren spent a lot of time with the microphones off talking about Brad Marchand not being at the Bruins anymore, because this dressing room is literally right across the hall from the Bruins locker room. And so we were all taking pictures with the big, you know, the big spoked B on the double doors across the hall, which was kind of funny. So that was the guys from Disturbed. I want to show you guys some other pictures. So here's where it got a little squirrely. So the guys from 3 Days Grace were like, absolutely, we want to do an interview with Mistress Carrie. So I went to the VIP meet and greet with those guys. Oh, wait, no, wrong one. Sorry, that's the Seven Dust Pictures, which I'll show you in a minute. And so we set up in a different, I think the 3 Days Grace guys just have one dressing room. So we set up in another room. I sat down with Adam Gontier and Matt Walst from 3 Days Grace, as you can see right here. Proof. We took a picture after the interview here. You can see on the table that there's just a little itty bitty portable recorder, which I have used in the past. It's just really small. It's easy for me to carry around. So I brought everything back. It's all on like a little memory card. I put the memory card in the computer to pull the interviews off, and the file with the 3 Days Grace interview is corrupted and unsalvageable. I miss tape so much sometimes, and this is one of those times. So I sat down with Matt Walst and Adam Gontier for like 20 minutes. We talked about Adam being back in the band, how that's affecting the writing process, the new album. They told me it's coming out this summer. They have not announced a release date yet, but they said, yes, the new album is coming out this summer. We spent a lot of time talking about their early memories of Boston, talked a lot about Adam leaving the band and coming back, how grateful they are for the fans to be welcoming this new era of 3 Days Grace, all of it, and it's all gone. Eric says, shit, I'm late. I'm on a trip in Japan. Well, that sounds wonderful. Donna says upstairs or downstairs at the Middle East. I believe Disturbed played downstairs at the Middle East. Alicia says the concert was amazing. Let's see. Jessica says, I'm sure you and Disturbed celebrated David's birthday. I threatened to sing for David Draymond, whose birthday was the day before, that Thursday before the Garden show. I walked in and I was like, I'm going to sing. And he was like, oh God, please don't. So I didn't. Let's see. Didn't they record their first album in Western Mass? Shane, are you talking about Seven Dust? They recorded their second album in Western Mass. Sounds like an LB memory when he didn't record the Pats players during the Super Bowl. Yeah, because he was wearing the recorder and he said his fat roll rolled over the recorder and hit stop. I recorded it. I was watching the counter because I know when, especially on a show day, which is why I do a lot of podcast interviews when the bands have days off and they're in their hotels, because they're not as strict with their timelines for the day because they're off. And so on a show day, the bands have really, especially if they're not the headliner, they have really strict schedules of when they need to be loaded in, when they need to sound check, those VIP meet and greets that they do. Sometimes they have other interviews lined up. If they have family in town, like they have a very strict schedule. And so they were like, Carrie, you can have the band from this time to this time. And then they got to go. And I was like, no problem. Absolutely. I'll be all set up. I sat in the room and waited. Mr. C was there with me. And, I was watching the counter on the recorder so that I knew what time it was, because there was no clock on the wall, to make sure that I gave them plenty of time to go and finish up the day. And so it was recording. I didn't forget to hit record. It was recording. But when I got the file back and pulled the memory card out of it, it was like so like audibly pixelated. It was like Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto on like 12. I tried every trick in the book to try and fix it. It's just corrupted. There's just nothing I can do about it. So I sent management, because 3 Days Grace and Disturbed share the same management. I sent them a message with the link to the Disturbed interview. And I was like, well, the good news is the Disturbed interview is great. The bad news is the 3 Days Grace interview is corrupted and I can't release it. And so obviously, as the band gets closer to announcing the new album, could you put me on the list so that I can interview them from my studio so that we can talk about the album and I'll actually have audio of it? So there you go. So just some pictures from 3 Days Grace. The reaction, like the garden was full for Sevendust at 6:30. And that was people's biggest complaint, is that the bands were so good, they wanted them all to play longer, but the show has to be over at 11. And so they started the show at 6:30 with the set changes. And then obviously Disturbed playing 2 sets with just the nature of the production and everything. 3 Days Grace played, I think Sevendust played for 30 minutes. 3 Days Grace played for 45 minutes, and then Disturbed played the rest of the night. And it's their tour, so there you go. But 3 Days Grace was great. I loved how they blended the voices of both singers. Adam Gontier referenced the time that he was out of the band and let Matt Walst sing lead on all of the songs that he sings lead on. And then the Adam Gontier era of the band, Matt Walst was singing backup. And their voices harmonize really great together. Like 3 Days Grace sounds great with 2 singers. So I thought they were awesome. Then, of course, there was the Sevendust guys. They have heard about my husband for years and have never met him, because all the times that I've seen them over the years, my husband has not been here. So when we walked into the meet and greet, which is up here, I always wait till like the end of the line when I want all the fans to go through and whatever. And I was like, guys, you guys get to meet my husband finally. And they were like, no way. And LJ and Morgan were grabbing him and shaking his hand and congratulating him on retiring and everything. And so then this picture is right before Sevendust went on stage. Oh no, right after Sevendust got off stage, before 3 Days Grace went on stage. By the way, that's Mike Mangini right there, who was at the show just because he knows all the bands and wanted to hang out. So this picture is at the after party, and it's all the drummers in the house. So it was Mikey Wengren and Mike Mangini and Morgan Rose, and then Chad. These are all Vader drummers, and Chad Brandolini from Vader Drumsticks. Yes, we talked about the Mistress Carrie drumsticks. They're all Vader drummers, and so Chad wanted to get a picture with all of the Vader drummers that were there, and I was like, you got to let me jump in there and get one. So there you go. And then just some candid shots. What was really cool, I was standing on the floor over by the entrance to like for the bands to get backstage, and what was really cool is that when Sevendust was on stage, the 3 Days Grace guys came out to watch them. And then when Sevendust was done, they came out on the floor with everybody else And, they had hoodies on and knit caps and beanies and whatever. And, wait. Hold on. I'm getting text messages right now. They were just out mingling with the crowd, and they just wanted to watch the show. And it was really cool because people were standing next to them and not knowing it was them. So like the 3 Days Grace guys were out walking around seeking out people in 3 Days Grace t-shirts, and the Seven Dust guys were seeking out guys like wearing Seven Dust shirts and going up and going, hey, how you doing? And watching the people's face go from like, why is this person tapping? Oh my God, you're Seven Dust. It was really, really funny. And then all the bands came out and watched Disturbed, which how could you not? Because they were unbelievable. The production was great. So the after party, I will just tell you a little bit about the after party. So they have a special room Disturbed does for friends and family. And after the show, people can go there and there's drinks and there's music and everybody's just kind of hanging out. A lot of the band members go, not all of them, especially the sober ones, kind of avoid stuff like that for obvious reasons. So we're all kind of hanging out, and Mr. C was hanging out over by like all of the mixers, like the drinks. And so Morgan from Seven Dust comes over and he's like, hey, I can't get back there. And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. So my husband was telling everyone that he was Mistress Carrie's executive producer or executive assistant. And so all of the guys in the bands were yelling at my Mistress Carrie's executive assistant, make me a drink. And then so my husband made Morgan a drink, and Morgan sipped it and was like, there's no booze in here. Like, this is Seven Dust. Like, if you're going to make me a drink, I want to taste it, which was really, really funny. And then at one point, Mikey Wengren from Disturbed, him, John Moyer, and Dan Donegan were all in the after party with Morgan. All of the 3 Days Grace guys, well, not all of them, but a lot of them. And Mikey decided to bring out bottles of tequila to do shots with everyone. And I was driving. So I'll just tell you that there may or may not have been a soon-to-be retired Marine leading the toasts and leading the shots during the after party. I'm just going to say that. And then all of the bands had to leave because their bus call was at like 1 or 1:30 or whatever, and they had to leave and go to the next show. So a good time was had by all. I didn't get home until like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I slept until like 2 the next day. I was exhausted, but the show was amazing. I'm so bummed out about the 3 Days Grace interview. I was freaking so pissed that file is corrupted. So I'm hoping that Matt and Adam are going to come back on the show and talk to me about the record and talk to me about their experience of playing at the Garden, which I said it in the Disturbed interview. I talked to LJ from Seven Dust about it the week before. Seeing those guys on that stage under those banners in that iconic venue in my hometown, having known them all for so long, I got really, I call it schmoopy, but I got really emotional and sentimental about it. Thinking back, LeJean said it in the interview last week, we grew up together, and we really did. And to see the heights that these guys are all achieving now, to see Adam back in 3 Days Grace after more than a decade, to see the guys in Seven Dust who have gone through Clint leaving for a while and coming back, and all of the things that have happened in their personal lives, and to see them performing at the level that they're performing, writing music that is as good as it is, to be able to tour and balance families and kids, and to see these bands still firing on all cylinders all these years later, just a really, really cool night. So if you have not seen the Sickness 25th anniversary tour yet, depending on where you're watching the show, you got to watch it. The first half has got Seven Dust and 3 Days Grace. The second half has got Nothing More and Daughtry on it. I need to show you guys what's happening right now. The snoring is exceptional right now. We were in the suite and we could see your hair glowing in the pit from the lights, says Alicia. I was not in the pit. I would like to correct you. I was next to the pit. There was no pit going for me, but I wanted to be on the floor because I wanted to be able to like really see up close and to be able to watch the bands. And then I was kind of walking around the floor trying to get like good angled shots of them on the stage with the banners. And yeah, Donna says Mr. C is assimilating perfectly. He was the ringleader of the trouble at one point in the night. And Mikey Wengren goes, oh, he's yours for sure. You're keeping this one. Like, he can't come with us because he'll cause too much trouble. And I was like, yes, ma'am, 4 a.m. home arrival. Damn, that's a month recovery for me, says Bish. Bish, I'm up that late a lot in the studio anyway. I had to get to the Garden in the middle of the afternoon to make sure that I got in, that my equipment went through security, that I set up backstage so that I was ready to interview the bands whenever they were ready for me. So I was at the Garden for 14 hours that day. It was a long day. Eric says, if you listen to a lot of David's Instagram posts, he is so incredibly well-spoken, like a college professor. Well, Eric, if you go back and you read the history of Disturbed, David Draymond worked in the healthcare industry as an executive and made really, really good money and funded the band in the early days. And when he finally quit his corporate job to follow his passion of being in a band, his mom was pissed. So he is very well spoken. He's very well educated, and he was very successful in the private sector before he became the Waka Kaka guy. So Brett says, is Connolly doing the marathon? So when I saw John Connolly from Seven Dust, I asked him if he was doing the marathon because he's run Boston the last 2 years. He is not running this year, even though he qualified. I asked him why. He showed me the email with his confirmed bib, and he's like, I am so bummed that I can't use it. But his training partner is running a 100-mile race, and John is going to pace him for 25 of those 100 miles. And so he's like, it would be too close to Boston. I just can't pull it off. The schedule is not going to make it work. So he's not running Boston this year, which I was super bummed out about. Rachel says, are the pugs snoring in stereo? Yes. What booze did you give Tuesday and Wednesday? You mean Wednesday and Friday? I didn't give them anything. This is just what happens. Pugs have energy for like 15 minutes and then they need to nap for 3 hours. It's just how they are. Jason said, I heard the Bulls banners got torched in Chicago. Jason, we already talked about it. You got to rewind the show. Talked all about it already. Carol says, I think David got fired because he used the photocopier for Disturbed stuff. Very possible, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he was very successful in the corporate world before Disturbed. I'm sure he has no regrets, and I'm fairly certain his mom is totally fine. I think I actually asked him about that, like on the second record, because The Sickness sold like 7 million copies. And so when the second record came out, I was like, is your mom still mad at you for quitting your job, or is she like, okay? And he said something like, she saw my paycheck and she's fine. Like, she finally was like, okay, my son is successful at doing this other thing with nails in his chin and all of that. So Bish says, I would gladly take his bib if he's offering. They won't let you transfer him. The charities can. But if you have a bib that you earned by qualifying, you can't transfer it. You can't let anybody use it. So there you go. Those are my stories from Friday night. There's a bunch more pictures that I took kind of backstage that I should probably put up on social media. I did put some stuff up just for the backstage pass holders as well. So we'll talk about a Mistress Carrie backstage pass coming up. If you are finding me on social media, if I showed up on your Instagram because I'm live or whatever, and you're like, I miss you on the radio, which people say to me all the time, I'm still on the radio in a bunch of different places, including 98 Rock in Charleston, Charleston's Best Rock. You can go to my98rock.com. I'm on 10 to 3 every weekday in Charleston. We have got our big rescheduled Lizzie and Joe from Hailstorm Living Room Sessions tour coming up on April 21st. And I also wanted to let you guys know that 98 Rock in Charleston was nominated for the best radio station in Charleston for the Best of Charleston 2025 awards. And there's only a few days left to vote. So if you guys could do me a favor, if you could go to 98 Rock's Facebook page, it's the post that's pinned to give you the opportunity to vote for 98 Rock for the best radio station in Charleston. We want the trophy. That would be really nice to be able to brag that we're the best radio station in Charleston. We know we already are, but having the certificate and the trophy would be really nice. So you can vote in the Best of Charleston Awards on the 98 Rock Facebook page. Just make sure that you vote for my 98 Rock. So there you go. You can hear me every weekday afternoon in Central Mass at the Pike in Worcester, 3 to 7. You can download the free Pike app. You can go to pikefm.com, stream the station. We have got 3 big signature outdoor shows happening this year. The summer kickoff with Tesla, that's coming up. All of these are at Indian Ranch in Webster, by the way. The annual Hair Fest is happening, which is always an absolute blast. And Grunge Fest is new this year. Tickets for all of these are already on sale. The details and the links are up on the concert calendar at mistresscarrie.com. But you can hear me on the Pike in Worcester every weekday from 3 to 7. You can also hear me on 106.3 The Bone in Portland, Maine. You can go to 1063thebone.com. And you can also download the free Bone app. And we were giving away 4 packs of tickets to the show on Friday last week. We gave away a ton of tickets on Laser, on the Pike, on the Bone. And the contest winners were coming up to me at the show going, I won the tickets from you. So that was really cool to know that we got a bunch of people in. So if you're up in the Portland area, if you like the rock music that you enjoy a little heavier, you want to listen to the Bone. The Pike is a little bit more classic leaning. 98 Rock is a little bit more of a combination of the two. The Bone is every weekday from 3 to 7. And if you're up early, the newest edition is Laser 99.3 and 98.5 in Springfield, Mass. You can hear me every weekday from 6 to 10 in the morning. You can go to laser993.com or download the free Laser app. But yeah, 6 to 10 every morning. Yes, we gave away a bunch of Disturbed tickets. And one of the features that we do is the 90s at 9. 3 songs from the 90s every weekday at 9 a.m. Coming up this weekend, I want to remind you guys about the Grunge Brunch. I talked to the guys at City Winery Boston yesterday, and the tickets are selling out fast. So if you forgot, the Stone Temple Posers are going to be playing Stone Temple Pilots acoustic unplugged set coming up this Saturday. Doors open at 11 at City Winery Boston. Music starts at noon. Mistress Carrie's Grunge Brunch featuring the Stone Temple Posers. Get your tickets now. It's up on the concert calendar at mistresscarrie.com. And also just put this on your calendar for later on in September. I'm going to have a big booth set up at the Johnny Appleseed Festival in downtown Leominster, which is my hometown, the pioneer plastic city and the birthplace of Johnny Appleseed. So there you go. All right. Last week's podcast episode was episode 249 featuring LaJean Witherspoon from Sevendust. Also, of course, there is the bonus episode of the podcast that we just launched yesterday featuring Dan and Mike from Disturbed. This is all about walking down memory lane, these 2 episodes. So if you haven't listened to them yet, they're up there right now. Like we already talked about, it was just so cool to see those guys on this tour. LJ talking about how grateful that the band was, that these guys are having this huge moment right now, and that according to LJ, they came back and got us, meaning that the Disturbed guys were like, we want to take our friends out on the road. The guys from Sevendust helped Disturbed along the way because Sevendust started earlier than Disturbed. And so Sevendust helped Disturbed along the way back in the day, and now Disturbed is helping Sevendust, which is pretty easy to see. Let's see. Rodney says, is the Pike and XLO in the same building? I hear your voice in the overhead door company on XLO. So they're owned by the same company. Yes, they're in the same building, but there are commercials that I voice that get played on XLO and on the Pike for different advertisers and stuff. So if you're hearing me on XLO, it's totally possible. Any memories from Sonny Mayo? I thought he was great during that era. I almost missed out on buying the next album due to the logo change back in the day when you couldn't find their name. Have a great week. So what's great, so for anybody that doesn't know, when Clint Lowry left Sevendust for a while, Sonny Mayo came in. Sonny's the guitar player in Snot, who's a wonderful guy. And now Snot is working with a new singer and working on new music and going out on the road. So to see Sonny, there's so many bands that over the years have lost their singers, whether it be, the grunge era bands all the way up to, Linkin Park, that you see these band members. It happened to the guys in Sublime. It happened to the guys in Snot. What are they supposed to do? And so for the guys from Snot, they did a lot of other things. And then they decided, you know what? No, we want to come back and we want to put the band back together, which is great. So Sonny's a great guy. He's awesome. Bish says no Celtics or Bruins games. Parking will be easier on Saturday for the Grunge Brunch. If you guys haven't watched it yet, have you seen Celtic City on HBO Max? It's a docu-series about the history of the Celtics, the early days of the NBA, all the way up through the modern era of the Celtics. I've watched the first 2 episodes. They come out every Monday, so I didn't watch yesterday's episode yet. Even if you're a passive Celtics fan, it's really fascinating. Tons of archival interviews, tons of history. And it's not just about the team, but it's also about the geopolitics of the city in the 50s and 60s and what was going on in Boston and how that all affected the Celtics. The Celtics were the first team to put 5 African-American players on the court as a starting 5. There were all of these bits of history and what was going on, not only in the country, but specifically around the busing era in Boston. It's a really, really fascinating docuseries. It's really well done. Tons of interviews with old players, new players, with a lot of Boston sports writers from back in the day as well, with ownership. It's really, really good. If you haven't watched it yet, definitely check it out. Bish says it's absolutely fantastic. Great episodes on civil rights in the city with Bill Russell. Yeah, they did a really good job of showing the warts and all. Like, they're not afraid to talk about the missteps. They're not afraid to talk about about the mistakes. And I didn't know that at one point the Celtics lineup was 6 white guys and 6 black guys. And Red Auerbach insisted that when they were on the road, because the players had to share rooms back then in hotels, that a black and a white player from the team had to room together. That was Red Auerbach's rule. He talked about what it was like for the team to travel to play Southern teams, especially in the early years with Bill Russell, what that was like. It's just really, really fascinating stuff. So if you haven't checked it out yet, you definitely should. It's called Celtic City, and you can watch it. It's a docuseries on HBO Max. Pardon me. Are you good? Were you not getting to, are you mad that I didn't have the pug camera on? So you're getting into my shot now? Is that what you're doing? Yeah. All right. So I want to let you guys know who's on the podcast this week. It's episode 250. So I wanted to pull out some big guns and have a big guest for this week's episode. And so episode 250, which goes live at midnight tonight, welcomes the one and only guitarist Billy Morrison, who has toured with The Cult. He has been Billy Idol's guitar player for the last 15 years. And he also released his solo album, The Morrison Project, which had him collaborating with his best friend, who is Ozzy Osbourne, on not one but 2 songs, Crack Cocaine and Gods of Rock and Roll. So he spent a lot of time talking about the collaborations on the album. Everybody from Al Jorgensen from Ministry to Corey Taylor from Slipknot to Daryl McDaniels from Run DMC, Linda Perry, Steve Vai, John Five. This album is stacked with artists, but it's Billy Morrison's debut solo album that he wrote these songs during COVID and then just started sending them to his friends. Even Billy Idol and Steve Stevens appear on the songs. Not all of the songs. He does a lot of the singing. 6 of the songs Billy Morrison sings himself. And so we talked about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We talked about his relationship with Ozzy. He was very hesitant to talk about his relationship with Ozzy, like his personal friendship with Ozzy. you'll hear all about that in this week's episode. So episode 250, Billy Morrison goes live at midnight tonight. Not only when you subscribe to the podcast do you get the weekly episodes and the bonus episodes, but you also get the sit rep Monday through Friday. It's all your rock news, music headlines, entertainment updates. The sit rep on the podcast is 5, 6, 7 minutes long. Now there's miniature sit reps that you can hear on Laser and on The Bone in Portland throughout the day, keeping you up to date on all of the music news and stories that are happening. So what's up, Christine on YouTube? Bish said, I loved it when Bill Russell sat down with a white reporter and he offered him a sip of his martini to see if he could trust him. So this is just one of the many Bill Russell stories who I have always loved and respected, but love him even more now with some of these candid little tidbits that are coming out in the Celtics docuseries. That Bill Russell was sitting down with a white journalist, and the journalist at the time didn't know he was being tested by Bill Russell. And Bill Russell sipped his martini and then was like, does this taste right? To see if the white reporter would take the glass and drink out of the same glass as Bill Russell because he was black. And he did, and ended up being the co-author of Bill Russell's memoir. But he was like, I didn't realize at the time that that was how Bill was testing me to see if I was trustworthy or not. So it's a really funny story that's in the docuseries. Louise says Wednesday can't get comfortable. She's comfortable now. But yeah, they pugs circle a lot to try and get as comfortable as possible. Jessica says, do you think Soundgarden is going to get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? This is the third year that they've been nominated, so I'm hopeful that this is going to be the year. I really, really hope that they get in this year. So if you're wondering where you can listen to the podcast, everywhere is the quick answer. All of the major podcast apps. You can listen to the audio on YouTube. You can go to mistresscarrie.com, find the episode you want to listen to, and just click play. But wherever you get your podcast, just search for the Mistress Carrie podcast, find that logo, and you're in the right spot. And we're still holding strong at 149 countries listening to the Mistress Carrie podcast. Someday we are going to get to 150. It's just not this week. If you're celebrating your birthday today on March 18th, you're sharing it with Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains, with Queen Latifah, and with Adam Levine from Maroon 5. So happy birthday to you. Happy unbirthday, Keith. Voorhees says, I have no idea how you record all of this stuff, all of the stations, all of the updates. Can one record before you physically run it out of time in the day? I have cloned myself successfully. There are more than one Mistress Carrie running around now, Mr. Voorhees. I'm just not going to tell you where they are, but one of them is skinnier than I am. No, I'm just kidding. It's time management. That's all it is. I have a very strict schedule when I'm in the studio. I don't mess around. And I have a chair that swivels and multiple keyboards and a bunch of different purple mice in MCHQ that are all numbered so that I know which mouse controls which monitor and which keyboard. And it's kind of insane when I'm in there working, but it's all good. It's working. Rachel said, it's my dad's birthday today. Happy birthday, Rachel's dad. Carol says, happy unbirthday, Keith. So some music headlines that I wanted to talk to you guys about. So there's more and more news coming out about the Back to the Beginning concert that is going to be the last Black Sabbath show ever, their first in 20 years, the last Ozzy show ever. I talked about this a little bit with Billy Morrison on this week's podcast episode. Tom Morello is going to serve as the musical director. Just in the last few days, Zakk Wylde has come out and said that all of the bands that are performing are going to perform a Black Sabbath song, which means Metallica is going to cover Sabbath. Guns N' Roses is going to cover Sabbath. Tool is going to cover Sabbath. Slayer, Pantera, Gojira, all Alice in Chains. All of the bands are going to be covering Sabbath. So Ozzy is going to perform with Sabbath. And then I wouldn't be surprised if singers like Jonathan Davis or Sammy Hagar or Billy Corgan, David Draymond from Disturbed, if they end up on stage performing with Ozzy or in place of Ozzy with Black Sabbath as well. So it's going to be really interesting. Tom Morello says he expects the show to be 10 hours long. We still do not have the official streaming outlet on how we're going to be able to watch this show, but I'm watching it. Iron Maiden not only releasing a 50th anniversary book, but they announced yesterday that they have made luggage tags out of the upcycled metal from Ed Force One, which was retired and scrapped last year. So they just put these tags up for sale that you can use to mark your suitcases, and they're made out of Iron Maiden's 747, which I thought was kind of a really cool idea. Also, Spinal Tap 2 is coming out in September. They have confirmed it is going to hit theaters in September. They made the logo Spinal Tap 2 using Stonehenge as the number 2. I can't wait. All the original cast are back. There's also supposed to be cameo appearances from Chad Smith and Lars Ulrich, and they're both drummers, which means there's a good chance they die in the movie. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the 1984 classic, This is Spinal Tap, it doesn't fare well for the drummers of Spinal Tap. Also, Paul McCartney and Elton John are supposed to be in it as well, but I was wondering if they were going to send it straight to a streaming platform. They're not. I cannot wait to get a cherry icy and a giant bucket of popcorn and watch Spinal Tap 2 in theaters. And Linkin Park announced they are releasing a brand new song coming up on the 27th. Up From the Bottom, it's called. It is not on From Zero. It's the song that the band was seen working on in the latest LPTV episode on YouTube. So they're not resting on their laurels. Linkin Park is releasing more new music next week. And then, of course, the From Zero World Tour is going out across North America with a stop in Boston at the TD Garden on August 1st. So there you go. Speaking of the Garden, Deftones coming up quick. Ghost, Linkin Park, Shinedown. Congratulations to the Shinedown guys. They won 2 iHeart Music Awards last night. 9 Inch Nails and Eric Clapton all heading to the Garden this year. So a lot of big rock shows. Sleep Token got announced that they are definitely heading to the DCU Center on September 23rd. Those tickets go on sale this Friday. And then also in September, the 4th annual Silver Scream Con, the guys from Ice Nine Kills, bringing their horror, gore, and metal festival back to the DCU Center for the 2nd straight year. They have not announced performances and all of that stuff yet, but you want to block that weekend off. Last year was an absolute blast. Big Night Live, Everclear just announced. Talk about a 90s show. Everclear, Local H, and Sponge at Big Night Live coming up October 21st. And just as a reminder, that Cold Chamber tour that was supposed to happen at the end of this month is going to get postponed to later on this year. Des Fafara from Cold Chamber and Devil Driver is still recovering. The Xfinity Center's got Simple Minds, Rod Stewart and Cheap Trick, Offspring with Jimmy Eat World and Newfound Glory. Volbeat tickets are on sale with Hailstorm and The Ghost Inside. The Doobie Brothers, Billy Idol and Joan Jett, Papa Roach and Rise Against with Under Oath. It is going to be a big, big, big concert year. Literally every day I'm updating the concert calendar at mistresscarrie.com. Including the Baby Metal show at Mohegan Sun with Motionless in White that just got announced today. That's going to be on June 27th. But I'm going to have to make a slide just for like the Connecticut casinos because, I mean, look at Hart, Foxwoods, Alice Cooper, Mohegan. There's just so many shows that are coming through. Def Leppard announced that Bret Michaels, The Struts, and Extreme are going to be rotating, opening up for Def Leppard. I don't know who's going to open up for them at Mohegan, but they're going to be at the Main Savings Amphitheater in Bangor a couple days before with The Struts. Speaking of The Struts, Luke Spiller from The Struts is getting ready to release his first solo album, and he announced that him and Taylor Hawkins recorded a song for a James Bond movie, and they ended up picking the Billie Eilish and Phineas song instead that won him an Academy Award. Well, they never released the Luke Spiller and Taylor Hawkins song. That song is coming out on Luke Spiller's upcoming solo album, which I think is going to be really cool. Like, cannot wait to hear that. I love those big anthemic James Bond theme songs. Just awesome. Leader Bank Pavilion, Toto, Christopher Cross, and Men at Work. If you have not seen the Yacht Rock documentary, you got to watch it. It's fantastic. The Goo Goo Dolls and also Chicago with more shows getting announced all the time. Fenway has got My Chem, totally sold out with Idols and also the Lumineers. Both of those shows, I believe, are totally sold out at Fenway. The Palladium has got The Plot in You, Memphis Mayfire, and Mushroomhead. We're already announcing shows for October. Can we not rush through the spring and summer? That would be great. Eric says, has Nine Inch Nails released anything lately? Well, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross have been releasing film scores, but they are supposed to be around this tour releasing new music. We just don't have it yet. Roadrunner has got Poison the Well, Ministry, Jet, and Dinosaur Jr. all coming this summer. And the MGM Music Hall at Fenway. Everybody from Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats to Spirit Box and Devo, Trivium and Bullet for My Valentine, Queens of the Stone Age with the Kills, the Pixies, Alabama Shakes, with more shows getting announced all the time too. Jane says Tim Montana is going to be at the Webster in Hartford May 8th. I saw that, Jane. That show is up on the concert calendar at mistresscarrie.com. House of Blues, Poppy's got 2 shows. The Used has got 3 shows. Machine Head. By the way, Machine Head is coming out with a blended Scotch whiskey that comes in a bottle shaped like a shotgun. Amazing. Marilyn Manson, Less Than Jake, and Bruce Dickinson on his first solo tour in 30 years, I think he said. Insane. That's going to be September 11th at the House of Blues in Boston. Paradise Rock Club, Quicksand's going to be there tomorrow night. The Linda Lindas next month. And the Melvins and Napalm Death coming up in May. And then also City Winery Boston this weekend. Stone Temple Posers, the Mistress Carrie Grunge Brunch. Get your tickets. The weather looks like it's going to be a really nice day to go have brunch and then wander around the city if you want. It's going to be sunny and warm. New music coming out on Friday. Kenny Wayne Shepherd, the Young Fashioned Ways. That is coming out. Also, Cradle of Filth, The Screaming of the Valkyries, My Morning Jacket Is, Pop Evil's new album, What Remains. Lee Kakati from Pop Evil is going to be coming on the show to talk about the new album. And Rush 50, all coming out this Friday. Record Store Day is happening on April 12th, which is a Saturday, and Access TV is going to have a special vinyl series on Access TV on Record Store Day, where they're taking people like Dave Mustaine, Gavin Rossdale, Billy Gibbons, and they're taking them vinyl shopping either in Nashville or LA to talk about the albums that kind of shaped their musical career. And so that Record Store Day special is going to be on Access TV on Saturday, April 12th, which is Record Store Day. Mail call, nothing in the mail call this week. You guys got me big time a couple weeks ago. So nothing in the mail call this week. Sorry, girls. Yeah, Wednesday's totally asleep behind me. And just for good measure, Friday is totally asleep over here as well. So there you go. I do want to let you guys know that I did have a conversation with the Vader drumstick guys. The Mistress Carrie drumsticks. We're going to get this thing over the finish line. We literally were joking about it Friday night at the Garden. So we are working on them and hoping to get them done very, very soon. If you don't have a Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass yet, you can get them on Patreon. You find out who's going to be on the podcast before anybody else. We do monthly exclusive live streams. When I travel, I take you wherever I'm going. You get early access to event information and tickets. You also get exclusive concert ticket giveaways. Right now, Backstage Pass holders have access to Spirit Box tickets, Trivium and Bullet for My Valentine tickets, and also Ghost tickets. So if you do not have a Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass, you can go to patreon.com/Mistress Carrie or just click the Mistress Carrie button at the Patreon button at mistresscarrie.com. And a reminder about all of the socials and where you can find me online and all of the radio stations and radio station apps that you can listen to me. All of those things are up at mistresscarrie.com. So it's super easy for you. And I want to remind you about the Mistress Carrie Veterans Rock public group on Facebook, the James Montgomery Band. This event is coming up. Tickets are on sale right now. This is also up on the event calendar at mistresscarrie.com. There's links, QR codes up in the veterans group. So if you're a veteran, if you love a veteran, if you're looking to hire a veteran, if you volunteer for a veterans organization, if you are a veteran-owned business, or if you just want to give back, you can do all of those things and more, get resources, volunteer, all of those things. Just go to the Mistress Carrie Veterans Rock Group on Facebook. Let's see. Good night, Sherry. Let's see. Bish says, Carrie, the Dropkicks just announced they're playing the stage at Suffolk Downs on September 6th and 7th. I did not see that yet, but they did announce a Dropkick Murphys Day at Fenway with full-blown bobblehead dolls, which I need to put that up on the concert calendar. So I will get those Suffolk Downs links up there. I must have missed that one. Let's see. Are you planning on giving those drumsticks to Sully and Shannon Larkin? They have plenty of their own drumsticks. Those guys have their own drumstick endorsements, so they have their own signature line of sticks. They don't need mine. Eric says, I had to call the ticket outlet. I used to buy my tickets. I have to take my phone everywhere because it helps to track my blood sugar. Look, even at the Disturbed show, I brought a portable battery pack with me because our phones do so much now that if your phone dies, you don't even have access to your tickets. So I always take a backup battery and a cell phone charger with me when I know, even when I travel, I have those in my purse because your boarding pass is on your phone now. So you've always got to make sure that your phone is charged and ready to go, especially if it has concert tickets on it. It's very important. All right, guys. That's it. Brand new episode of the podcast, live at midnight, episode 250, featuring guitarist Billy Morrison. The bonus episode with the guys from Disturbed is already up. Grunge Brunch this weekend. I hope to see you guys there. Doors open at 11. The Stone Temple Posers start playing at noon. The unplugged set from the Stone Temple Pilots, which is going to be great. So I will see you guys there. There's also a chance that a last-minute appearance on Saturday night in the Worcester area is going to get announced. So just keep your eyes on my socials, and I'll let you know what's going on with that. Are you awake? Come here. Do you want to say goodnight to everyone? You're such a sleepy face dog. How come you're so tired? How come you're so sleepy? I know, you're so tired. I know. Or do you just want to snuggle? Do you want to just take a little nap? There you go. You want to take a little nap and snuggle with your mom? Okay. All right, guys. I will see you guys next week. Do you want to say goodnight? Or you just want to snore? Yeah. Say goodnight Wednesday. All right, guys. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you for hanging out in the war room with me. So you want to say goodnight? Say goodnight.